Have you ever had one of those days where one tiny mistake spins your whole life in a direction you never saw coming? Imagine spilling coffee on a stranger, someone powerful, someone untouchable, thinking you'll be humiliated or fired or worse, and then somehow, days later, you're staring at that same man across the dinner table, wearing a ring he put on your finger. Sounds impossible, right? But let me tell you something. You clicked on this video because you saw that title and your brain immediately whispered, "Wait, how the hell did that happen?" And that's exactly what you're about to find out. So don't skip ahead, don't scroll past, because every second of this story peels back another layer of a romance so unexpected, it feels like a plot twist written by fate itself. Now, I'm not just telling you a love story. I'm taking you deep into the moment where everything changed for two complete strangers. This isn't just some fairy tale. It's messy, it's real, it's driven by the kind of raw emotion that reminds you just how wildly unpredictable life can be. I'm talking about heartbreak, second chances, forgiveness, power, and yes, an accidental coffee spill that turned into a spark neither of them could ignore. And the wildest part? It wasn't love at first sight. In fact, it almost ended in disaster. But sometimes the most beautiful stories start with the biggest messes. So stay with me, because you're not just watching a video, you're entering a world where one wrong move turned into the right beginning. And the answer to how she went from ruining his $1,000 suit to becoming the woman who owned his heart is hidden in the moments you're about to experience. I know you're curious. I know you're wondering, did he forgive her? Did she chase him down? Was it a setup, or fate? I promise you'll get every answer, but only if you stay till the end. Trust me, this is not the kind of story you want to half-watch. It's the kind you feel in your chest, the kind that leaves you questioning how something so chaotic could become something so beautiful. It's not just a story, it's a journey. And you're right at the start of it. Her name was Kayla. 26, overworked, underpaid, and always running 5 minutes late. She was the kind of girl who apologized with her eyes before she even opened her mouth. Sweet, but scattered. Bright, but too busy to shine. And on that rainy Monday morning, she was juggling 2 hot coffees, a soaked tote bag, and the kind of nervous energy that only came from knowing she was late to an interview that could change her entire life. Her shoes were slipping on the marble lobby floor of one of Manhattan's most intimidating skyscrapers. You could smell the power in the air. Money, ambition, cold-brewed intimidation. And then it happened. She collided with him like a bad dream. Coffee exploded across his perfectly tailored navy blue suit. The kind of suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The cup in her hand fell to the floor and shattered into a mess of foam, liquid, and paper. Exactly how her confidence felt in that moment. She froze. Her heart stopped. Her breath caught. She could barely lift her eyes to meet his. But when she did, something strange happened. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He didn't even flinch. He just looked at her, long and hard, like he was trying to read something behind her eyes. And then, in the kind of low, calm voice that made her knees wobble, he said, "I hope you're not here for the interview." Those were the first words Nathan Cross ever said to Kayla Monroe. Now, let's pause for a second. Because if you're thinking this is the moment he falls head over heels in love with her, think again. This was the moment he decided she was careless. A mess. A walking disaster. And Nathan Cross didn't do disasters. He was all about order, control, power. He didn't believe in accidents. He believed in results. And yet, something about her stuck in his mind long after she ran out of the building, cheeks flushed, mumbling apologies like prayers. Something about the way she looked back over her shoulder just before the elevator doors closed. Something real. Something unfiltered. Something he hadn't seen in a very long time. Kayla thought she'd blown her shot at a better life. She went home and cried into a takeout box of cold noodles, convinced the universe hated her. But here's the thing about fate. It has a wicked sense of humor. Because not only did she still get the job interview, she got the job. And guess who her new boss turned out to be? Yep, him. Nathan Cross, billionaire CEO of Crosstech, the youngest self-made tech mogul in the city, the man who'd built an empire with a stare so cold it made people melt. Kayla couldn't believe it. She didn't understand why he hired her. She thought it was a prank. But Nathan wasn't the type to play games. He saw something in her. Something he didn't even want to admit to himself. That's where the real story begins. Because from that moment on, everything between them was a push and pull. He was logic. She was emotion. He was steel. She was fire. He challenged her. She surprised him. She made mistakes. He secretly admired them. And even though they couldn't be more different, their connection started growing in the spaces between words, in the silences after arguments, in the accidental touches that lingered just a second too long. It was unspoken, unavoidable, unforgivable, and yet completely irresistible. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, cool setup, but how do we go from that to a proposal? How does a girl who spills coffee on a billionaire end up with his ring on her finger? That's the real twist. Because what started as tension turned into trust. And what began with spilled coffee turned into spilled secrets. Family drama. A past he never told anyone about. A truth she uncovered by accident that could have destroyed everything. But she didn't run. She stayed. Even when it got dark. Even when she had every reason to walk away. But the turning point, the moment everything changed, didn't happen in the office. It happened one night, when they were alone, trapped in the company elevator after a storm knocked the power out. Trapped with only their thoughts, their fears, and each other. And in that darkness, Nathan said something to Kayla that she would never forget. Something he had never told a single soul. And what she said back? Well, let's just say that was the moment he stopped seeing her as an employee. And started seeing her as the only woman who ever made him feel something he couldn't control. But just when things started to fall into place, everything shattered. Because someone from Nathan's past came back. Someone who wanted revenge. Someone who knew his secrets. And they were ready to use Kayla to get to him. Now here's where you need to stay locked in. Because the next part of the story is where things get dangerous. Romantic. Emotional. Twisted. And unbelievably real. You'll find out what Nathan's been hiding. Why Kayla was the only one who could save him. And what happened on the night everything exploded. When she made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. So if you've been asking yourself, how did she go from coffee spiller to the woman wearing his ring? You're about to find out. But it's not what you think. It's deeper. Wilder. And when you hear what happened next, you won't just be surprised. You'll be stunned. Because sometimes, the story isn't about how they met. It's about what they survived. And right now, just as they were finally about to take that leap, just as he was reaching into his pocket to pull out the ring he'd been hiding for weeks, she got a phone call. One that would shatter everything. Who was on the other end of that call? What did they say? And why did Kayla suddenly run out of the room with tears in her eyes before he could even ask the question? That's the part you won't believe. Stay with me. Kayla didn't look back. Her heels echoed sharply against the marble hallway as she dashed out of the executive lounge, heart racing, phone still trembling in her hand. The call had lasted less than 30 seconds, but it had changed everything. Nathan had been standing there, velvet box in his hand, moments from proposing, and she, without a word, had turned and left him alone. In that moment, the tension that had been simmering between them for weeks cracked wide open, but not in the way you'd expect. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that Kayla had just heard a voice she thought she'd never hear again. Her brother, Evan, missing for 3 years, presumed dead, had just called her by name and whispered, "He's not who you think he is. Be careful." Then the line went dead. No number. No trace. Nothing but a raw whisper in her mind that made the ground beneath her feel suddenly unstable. She couldn't tell Nathan. Not yet. Not until she figured out what it meant. And so she ran, not because she didn't love him, but because for the first time since she'd met him, she wasn't sure if she could trust him. Nathan stood there for several long minutes, not moving, not breathing, just staring at the door she'd disappeared through. He wasn't used to feeling powerless. In the boardroom, he was the one who made people sweat, who closed billion-dollar deals with a glance, who ran his world with precision and control. But with Kayla, everything was different. She disarmed him, confused him, pulled things out of him he didn't even know he had buried. He had tried to fight it at first, dismiss it as a distraction, a workplace inconvenience, a rookie mistake in judgment. But she'd become more than that. She'd become his calm in the chaos, the only person who didn't treat him like a machine in a suit. He had never told her about his mother's disappearance when he was a boy, or the string of cold case investigators he secretly funded every year to search for her. He had never mentioned that every time he looked at Kayla, a part of him ached in a way that felt familiar, like loss and hope had collided and made a home inside her smile. That night, Kayla didn't go home. She checked into a hotel downtown using a different name, phone off, mind racing. She needed time to think, to understand how a man like Nathan, so guarded, so careful, could be connected to her brother's voice. Her mind flashed back to Evan, to the last time she saw him alive, the argument they had over a deal he was involved in, something shady, something tech-related that he said would change everything. She had begged him to walk away. He didn't. Then he disappeared. Everyone assumed he was gone for good, probably caught up in some offshore scam. But now, hearing his voice again and hearing the fear in it, Kayla started wondering if Nathan had known Evan. If Crosstech had secrets darker than its billion-dollar valuation suggested. She couldn't accuse him, not without proof. But she also couldn't ignore it. Meanwhile, back at the Crosstech headquarters, things were shifting fast. Nathan's chief of security, Marcus, had flagged something strange. A breach attempt on the company's confidential research server. Nathan's first instinct was to lock everything down, but the timing felt too personal. Too targeted. It happened the same day Kayla left. Marcus, a former intelligence operative who had worked with Nathan since his first startup days, warned him that this wasn't random. Someone knew what they were building. Someone who had been inside. But Nathan's mind wasn't on the breach. It was on Kayla. He didn't believe in coincidences, and the fact that she had vanished right before the breach only made him question things more. Was she involved? Being used? Or worse, was she a threat? The idea made him sick, but the questions kept coming, no matter how hard he pushed them away. In a dusty apartment across town, a man sat watching a wall covered in photos, string, and printed emails. Evan Monroe was alive. Barely. Gaunt, eyes tired, but determined. He'd been hiding ever since he discovered what Crosstech was really building. On the surface, the company's latest, energy-neutral AI assistant project sounded like the next tech revolution. But behind the scenes, it was something else entirely. Data tracking, predictive behavior manipulation, coded emotion analytics, technologies capable of turning any device into a silent manipulator. Evan had tried to leak the info 3 years ago, and nearly got killed for it. Since then, he'd been running. Watching. Waiting. And now, seeing Kayla with Nathan, he knew he didn't have much time. If she got too close, she'd be a pawn. Or a target. Kayla spent the next few days diving into the kind of research that left her sleepless. Late nights in library archives, forgotten news clippings, startup records, and dark web posts. The deeper she went, the more questions she had. What exactly had Nathan's mother been working on before she vanished? Why were there sealed court documents related to her name and a case titled Project Echo? And why did Kayla find a photograph in an old online forum that showed Nathan, barely 16, standing next to a woman who looked exactly like her own mother? It didn't make sense. The connections were too scattered, but they were there. Ties between their families that went back farther than she realized. And all of it wrapped around Crosstech. She knew she had to confront Nathan, but not before she spoke to her brother again. She needed more than a warning. She needed the full story. Back at Crosstech, Nathan was unraveling too, but from a different thread. He had started replaying every conversation with Kayla, scanning her words for hidden meaning, second-guessing everything. He didn't want to believe she had used him, but trust was not something he gave easily. His father had been betrayed by a business partner who wiped out everything and left him penniless. Nathan had spent years watching his dad drink away the bitterness, promising himself he'd never let anyone get that close. Until Kayla. And now, just when he'd let her in, she vanished, and the walls he'd spent years building started to shake. Tension rippled through both their worlds, but neither of them knew that the real danger wasn't just from secrets. It was from someone watching both of them. A figure hidden in the shadows of their lives. Someone who had been pulling strings from the beginning. Someone who didn't want the truth exposed. A former Crosstech developer who had gone rogue years earlier and was now resurfacing with a plan to bring down the entire company, and anyone connected to it. They had eyes on Nathan. They had eyes on Kayla. And the next move was already in play. Days later, Nathan received a package at his penthouse. No return address. Inside was a single USB drive and a note that read, "She deserves to know what you did in Berlin." The mention of Berlin hit him like a gut punch. No one knew what had happened there. No one should have. It was supposed to be buried. He slid the USB into his laptop and a video began to play. Grainy surveillance footage, a lab, screams, a fire, and a younger. With blood on his shirt and a hard drive in his hand. It wasn't the whole story. But it was enough to ruin him. At that exact moment, Kayla was walking toward his building, phone buzzing in her hand, a new text from a burner number. If you love him, don't let him know you're coming. She froze. Looked up at the penthouse lights. And for the first time, she wondered if she was walking into a trap. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. And just as they closed behind her, someone else slipped into the building. But who it was, and what they wanted, would change everything. The elevator climbed slowly, each floor taking longer than the last, as if the universe was stalling, warning Kayla to turn back. But she didn't. Her heart thudded in her chest like a drum, her breath shallow, her fingers clenched around her phone. The text replayed over and over in her mind. Asterisk if you love him, don't let him know you're coming. Asterisk she didn't know who sent it, or how they even knew where she was, but it chilled her to the bone. And yet she had to see him. Had to look him in the eye and ask about Berlin, about her brother, about why her past was tangled so tightly around a man she barely knew 6 months ago. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open to Nathan's penthouse, the view of the skyline stretching beyond the glass like a painting. The room was quiet. Too quiet. No music, no lights, just the faint hum of the city below. Then, a sound, a soft shuffle from the other side of the kitchen island. She stepped forward slowly, unsure whether to speak or to turn and run. But before she could decide, Nathan emerged from the shadows, his expression unreadable, the USB drive in his hand. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. As if he'd spent the last hour wrestling with every memory he'd spent years trying to bury. He didn't ask her why she left. He didn't ask how she knew where to find him. He just held up the drive and said, "You saw it, didn't you?" Kayla shook her head, but her voice cracked when she whispered, "Berlin. What happened there?" Nathan didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, he said something that made her legs nearly give out beneath her. "Your brother didn't disappear because he was in trouble with some startup scam. He disappeared because he found out what we were doing in Germany, and he tried to stop it." Her mouth went dry. The dots were connecting faster now. She remembered Evan warning her that Crosstech was building something dangerous. She remembered the secrecy, the anxiety, the way he'd suddenly gone quiet. "You knew him," she said. "You knew Evan." Nathan nodded slowly. "He was brilliant. Reckless, but brilliant. He got into our Berlin lab through a contact. He saw our prototype. A predictive surveillance program that could anticipate human behavior. It was meant to stop attacks before they happened. That's what we told the investors. But what we were building, it could do a lot more than that." Kayla's voice was barely a whisper now. "You used it on people?" Nathan hesitated. "Not me. But the board did. And when Evan found out, he downloaded the beta code and tried to leak it. They came after him. I tried to stop it. I thought he escaped. But then he vanished." Kayla stepped back, her thoughts spinning. If Nathan was telling the truth, then her brother hadn't just run. He had been silenced. And if that footage on the USB was real, then Nathan had been there, right in the middle of it, doing nothing. The weight of betrayal settled in her chest like a stone. But just as she opened her mouth to ask the next question, a sudden crash shattered the tension. A window burst open across the room, glass exploding inward as a black drone flew straight through, slammed into the floor, and released a burst of smoke. Kayla screamed. Nathan grabbed her by the arm and pulled her to the floor, shielding her as the drone sparked and died. Within seconds, Marcus burst into the penthouse, gun drawn, yelling into a hidden earpiece. "We've got a breach. Floor 89. Repeat. Breach confirmed." The room filled with chaos, and Kayla realized something terrifying. Someone had just tried to kill them. They scrambled out of the apartment through the private exit in the back hallway, Marcus guiding them down a secure stairwell. "They're watching you both," he barked. "We picked up chatter 2 nights ago. Someone wants to leak the Berlin footage and make it look like you orchestrated the whole thing." Nathan cursed under his breath. Who's behind it?" Marcus looked at him, grim. "I think it's Elias Gray." Nathan froze mid-step. Kayla didn't recognize the name, but the look on Nathan's face told her everything. He was one of our founding developers. Got pushed out after the Berlin incident. Blamed me for covering it up. Said we ruined his career. Kayla's heart pounded. He's the one who sent the footage? Marcus nodded. And if he has the rest of the data from Berlin, he can bring down everything. Your company, your legacy, everything you've built. But Nathan wasn't listening anymore. His mind was racing, eyes glazed over in panic. If he's back, then he knows about Project Echo. That name again. Project Echo. Kayla had seen it in old case files, mentioned in whispers online. Something to do with emotion mapping, neural response tracking. Technology that could read someone's face and tell not just what they were feeling, but what they were planning. She turned to Nathan, voice shaking. What is Project Echo? He hesitated, then finally spoke. It's the real reason CrossTech exists. The AI assistant we're developing. It doesn't just listen. It learns. It learns what you fear, what you love, what breaks you. And it uses that to predict your choices. Imagine software that could anticipate rebellion before it happened. That's what Echo was meant for. But I shut it down after Berlin. Or at least I thought I did. Kayla stepped back, stunned. You built something that could control people. Nathan's voice cracked. No. We built it to protect people. But the board, they wanted to sell it to defense contractors. And I didn't stop them in time. Before she could respond, they reached the underground garage. A black SUV waited for them, engine already running. As they climbed in, Marcus handed Nathan a tablet. Satellite picked up Gray's signal downtown. He's in the city. Kayla glanced at the screen, and her blood ran cold. The building Elias Gray was broadcasting from? It was the same address her brother had called from. She turned to Nathan. He's got Evan. Nathan's jaw clenched. Then we're not just stopping a leak. We're saving your brother. The SUV peeled away into the night, city lights blurring past the windows. Tension filled the cabin like smoke. Neither of them knew what would happen next. But one thing was clear. Whatever secrets Nathan had buried in Berlin were about to come roaring back. And Kayla wasn't sure if she was falling in love with a hero or a monster. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that Evan wasn't just being held. He was working with Elias. Willingly. Because he believed the only way to bring down CrossTech was from the inside. And the final move in this twisted game of loyalty and lies was about to be made. Would you like me to continue the next section from here and push the story toward its climax? The SUV raced through the city like a bullet, weaving through late-night traffic, shadows flickering across Kayla's face as she sat in stunned silence. Everything she thought she knew about her life, about Nathan, about her brother, had been rewritten in just a matter of hours. She wanted to believe there was still something good buried beneath all of it, that the man beside her wasn't the villain her instincts now warned her to fear. But doubt clung to her like fog. As they neared the address, the abandoned broadcast center on the east side of town, Marcus slowed the vehicle and killed the headlights. The building looked dead from the outside, windows boarded up, graffiti streaking its walls, the remnants of a forgotten tech startup hub long since left behind. But Nathan knew better. Gray had always chosen irony when it came to hiding places. It was never about staying invisible. It was about sending a message. Inside the building, Evan paced nervously, his gaunt face lit only by the glow of a dozen monitors. Elias Gray sat behind him at a makeshift desk, fingers dancing across a keyboard, uploading the last fragments of the Berlin footage to a hidden server set to go public in under an hour. Evan's heart thudded in his chest, not from guilt, but from the weight of choice. He had agreed to help Gray because he wanted justice. Because he had seen what CrossTech had been building and he couldn't stay silent. But something had shifted since Kayla reappeared. He hadn't expected her to get involved. He thought he was protecting her by staying hidden. Now, he wasn't sure she'd survive what came next. You said she wouldn't get hurt, Evan said, his voice low. That was the deal. Gray didn't even look up. Then let's hope she stays out of the way. Moments later, Nathan and Kayla breached the side entrance, guided by Marcus's comms and infrared scans. The building was a maze of forgotten dreams. Old server racks, broken glass, startup slogans peeling from the walls. Nathan moved like a man on a mission, but Kayla kept her distance, every step closer to her brother feeding the war inside her. Was Nathan here to save Evan, or silence him? She had to believe he wasn't the monster the footage tried to show. And yet, She knew firsthand how power could twist a person. At last, they reached the top floor. The servers hummed with quiet menace, and in the center stood Evan. Older, thinner, but unmistakably him. Kayla gasped, emotion crashing over her like a tidal wave. "Evan," she whispered. He turned, eyes locking with hers, and for a moment, time froze. "Kay," he breathed. But before they could embrace, Gray stepped into view, holding a small sleek remote in his hand. "Touching," Gray said, his voice dripping with venom. "But we're past reunions. We're down to choices now. Truth or silence." Nathan stepped forward, hands raised. "Elias, we can end this without blood. You don't need to destroy everything." Gray laughed coldly. "That's rich, coming from the man who watched it all burn in Berlin and did nothing." He waved the remote. "This goes live in 40 seconds. All of it, the footage, the memos, the buried research, echoes real design. Every lie Crosstech told the world. And when it does, you'll be finished. No more suits. No more power. Just the truth." Kayla looked between them, her pulse pounding. "Evan, please. Don't do this. There's a better way." Her brother's face twisted in pain. "You think I wanted this? I begged for another way. But Nathan's board made sure we had none. They used you, Kay. The moment you got close to him, you became leverage." That was when Nathan did something no one expected. He stepped forward, pulled a flash drive from his jacket pocket, and held it out. "Here," he said to Gray. "This has everything. Not just the footage, but the personal logs. The full blueprint of Echo. My mother's research. It proves I tried to stop them. Take it. Leak it. Just leave them out of it." Gray hesitated. Even Evan looked shaken. "Why would you give this up?" Gray asked. Nathan's voice cracked. "Because I don't want to be the man my father became. I won't trade people I care about for legacy. You win. I'm done." For a moment, it seemed like it might work. Gray reached out. But just before his fingers touched the drive, Marcus appeared behind him and disarmed him with a swift move, sending the remote flying across the room. Alarms blared. The upload stalled. The footage froze. Chaos exploded. Gray lunged for a backup console. Evan tried to stop him. In the scuffle, a stray elbow hit the trigger on a security failsafe and suddenly the room plunged into lockdown. Steel barriers sealing the exits. Smoke hissed from the vents. Kayla screamed for Evan as Nathan grabbed her and shielded her behind a wall of servers. Then, an explosion. Not large, but enough to knock the breath from their lungs. When the smoke cleared, Gray was gone. So was the drive. Evan lay unconscious, but alive. Sirens wailed in the distance. Authorities had been alerted. The story was over. But not the way anyone expected. In the days that followed, the world changed. Crosstech's board was dismantled after anonymous data leaks revealed layers of ethical violations. The Echo project was seized by federal investigators. Nathan stepped down and testified publicly, exposing every dark corner of the company's secret research. He became both a whistleblower and a pariah. Headlines painted him as a complicated man, part hero, part cautionary tale. Kayla stood by him at first, through the hearings and media storms, but as the dust settled, she knew she needed something more than half-truths and ruined empires. She needed healing. And so she left. Not in anger, but in love. Because sometimes, love means walking away so both people can find who they truly are. Evan recovered. He disappeared again shortly after the investigation closed, leaving behind a message for Kayla. Asterisk, I'm doing it right this time. I'll be in touch when I can. Asterisk, no trace. No signal. Just hope. Months later, on a quiet beach far from the city, Kayla sat with a notebook in her lap, staring at the waves. Her phone buzzed. A message. No name. Just coordinates. She smiled. Somewhere, her brother was still fighting. Still trying to make it right. And as for Nathan, he never stopped looking for redemption. Last she heard, he was building something new. A company based on transparency. Accountability. Humanity. But she didn't need to follow that part of the story anymore. She had lived it. And now she was writing her own. Because love, real love, isn't about fairy tales. It's about choices. About seeing someone's darkest truth and still believing they can rise. And sometimes, the biggest twist is learning that forgiveness is the most powerful ending of all. Would you like me to now create a short YouTube outro or voiceover script based on this story to close your video with impact?